guess this is the plan! Come on, Pete, you got this! You got this, you got this, you got this! Please don't screw this up!
Who's excited for Spider-Man 2? I know I am. Can't wait to sink my teeth into it when it drops later this October. You know, honestly, I don't even know if this video will be out by then, knowing my track record. Hey everybody, my name is BlakJak, and welcome to my review for 2018's Marvel's Spider-Man and 2020's Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's been a hectic time for me lately. I figured I would do you guys a double review. I'll leave the spoilers towards the end of the video for both games, with links to them in the description down below. Without further ado, let's swing on into the review. I figured we should talk about the controls and content for both games first. 2018 Spider-Man has some of the most tight and freeing controls in most any video game that I've ever played. Peter has a fluid feel when swinging around New York City. He feels quick and heavy when landing blows on the enemies, and all the gadgets are really fun to use with the engaging combat and stealth mechanics. Miles Morales has a similar feel to 2018 Spider-Man, however, I can't help but feel it just ever so slightly is a little bit more clunky. For instance, in 2018 Spider-Man, when I launch an enemy, then whip them up, and then I like to yank them down back to the ground so they immediately stick to the ground to immobilize them. But in Miles Morales, it feels like the command to yank after webbing the enemy gets dropped or stuck. It feels like you have to time it a little differently. So what ends up happening is the enemy gracefully falls back down, not being immobilized. But even the point launch mechanic is slightly off. In 2018's, you can push the jump button right as you land on the point to get the extra boost launch, but in Miles Morales, the timing feels off, if not a bit earlier. All in all, the controls are really good in Miles Morales, but they could be a bit better, I feel. Both Spider-Man have gadgets and abilities that help them take on the likes of the classic Spidey rogue villains like the Rhino and the Vulture. Both have the web shot, which is my bread and butter way to dispatch and tie up goons to either throw them or stick them to walls. They also auto-refill. Impact Web is just like the web shot, but it instantly webs up an enemy and launches them backwards. It's super useful when taking on a more stealthy approach to an encounter and instantly taking out up to 4 dudes. Brutes just get webbed up in one shot, when normally they take nearly the entire cartridge of web shots. Miles and Peter both have drones, but they're slightly different. They function the same, so we'll talk about them together. The Spider Drone is a small robot that flies around and inflicts damage onto enemies. The Holo Drones are holograms that draw attention and inflict damage to enemies. Both can be taken out by the enemies, and I find the Spider Drones not to be as useful because they break quicker than the Holo Drones. Peter has electric webs, which can shock and stun multiple enemies at the same time. They're also used for a few simple puzzles. They're like the impact webs, but they don't stick anyone to the walls. I really only use them when I'm out of impact webs and are dealing with an annoying enemy type. There are better ways to electrify enemies anyway in Spider-Man 2018. The concussion blast is fucking hilarious. It just shoots a blast of air at whoever happens to be in your way and it launches them. And I cackle every time I launch a dude or 3 into the stratosphere with this tool. Fucking yeah, I get obliterated. The web bomb is super useful when dealing with a cluster of enemies. It will instantly web up a large group of people, and if they're near a wall, you'll even get rid of a few of them instantly. It's a powerful tool and should be used in the challenge missions. The trip mine and the remote mine are really good stealth weapons. Not that you have to use them only in the stealthy sections, but they are definitely at their peak in those circumstances. The trip mine can be placed on any location, whether it be a wall, a ceiling, a floor, or even a person, and it will stick an enemy to whatever it is they're placed on. I like sticking the enemies to other enemies. I find it really funny. The remote mine takes out an enemy, but if you stick it to an electrical surface, it will increase the range, and it will make a loud noise, attracting a couple of enemies to the source of the noise. And then you have to manually trigger the electric zap. The suspension matrix and the gravity well are much like the drones, similar, but slightly different. The suspension matrix launches a group of enemies into the air and holds them there for a few seconds, allowing you to air combo them, whereas the gravity well brings a group of people to the epicenter of the blast. This brings a group closer so that you can then use one of Miles' abilities on multiple people. Whether that's Venom Smash, Punch, or Launch, it can be situational, but it's very useful. It's also super useful on some of the bosses. Speaking of Miles' abilities, the Venom moves are awesome. They add a fun dynamic to the already tight combat mechanic. The Venom Punch acts as a finisher, taking out smaller enemies quickly, but it does heavy damage to bigger and tougher enemies like bosses. It can even break certain enemies' weapons and shields. The Venom Launch acts as the suspension matrix, allowing for a group of enemies to be launched into the air, allowing for aerial combos to land easier. This maneuver is useful against the Roxxon shield enemies. The Venom Dash is a quick attack that covers a large range and makes hitting the sword enemies easier. This move is also a throw, allowing Miles to chuck an enemy into a group of others or off a building, ensuring a takedown. Venom Smash is an area of effect type of attack, useful for spreading damage to a group of enemies. Personally, I'm bad at landing it on many enemies, but it also is just really fun to jump off tall buildings and smash down onto unsuspecting enemies below. My favorite ability is the Venom Blast. It's a wide area of effect move that takes out anyone in the vicinity. It will even instantly heal you when activated. However, you need to have 3 bars filled of Venom. On the topic of bars, I guess I should explain the combat and stealth mechanics real quick. In both 2018's Spider-Man and Miles Morales, the player has a plethora of ways to take on any encounter. Both Spider-Man have a basic ground attack and air attacks that they can simply use to knock out any opponent. But the real fun and the combo is when you start mixing it up with gadgets and web attacks and air combos, and it's so much fun. Oh, and throws, don't forget throws. Throwing items, throwing people, whatever, don't matter. A combo could simply be beating a dude into the corner repeatedly until you knock them out, or you can hit them for a bit, launch them in the air, hit them some more, blah blah blah, then throw them into other enemies below, not only increasing your combo, but also mobilizing the enemy in the process. Although the combat in these games are Arkham adjacent, I wouldn't say they are one-to-one. There is a lot of inspiration, but the motivation for taking out the enemies is different. Whereas in the Arkham games, you want to not get hit while having the highest combo possible in order to get the bonus points at the end of the challenges. In the Insomniac Spider-Man games, your goal to achieve higher points depends on how quickly you can dispatch the enemies and end the fight, whether that be by knocking them out or by whipping them up to walls and the floor. The other way to increase your combo is by hopping from enemy to enemy by zip kicking them. Pressing the zip kick button lets Spider-Man fly on over to the enemy to continue his assault. It can be useful when dealing with a group of enemies, and then you want to take on that ranged enemy who's taking shots at you. Building up your combo allows the finisher and the Venom meters to build up. This allows the Spider-Man to take out anyone at the cost of 1 or 2 bars. If you're ever low on health, Peter can use some of his focus bar to heal, and Miles can do the same but at the cost of his Venom bar. Miles actually keeps his finishers when healing. Both Spider-Man can throw objects at enemies. These can be objects that are littered on the streets of New York, like manhole covers or car doors. They can even disarm enemies of their own weapons and throw them back at the would-be wall decorations. While the Arkham games have a heavy focus on countering enemies, the Marvel Spider-Man games have a similar focus on dodging enemies. Some enemies can't be hit from the front, so you need to dodge under them in order to strike. Other abilities allow the spiders to dodge onto a wall, and then you can wall punch them. This can even bypass certain enemy defenses like the melee enemies. The swing kick is also such a move that can bypass certain enemy defenses. Getting a perfect dodge can stun an enemy or even set up for an instant takedown. Dodging enemies is a good way to fill up the bars in order to heal. I found myself having to do that on some of the harder bosses. Any encounter can be a stealth encounter. There aren't many dedicated Predator sections like that of the Arkham games, but they do also share a few similarities. Gadgets are a fun and easy way to dispatch of enemies, but unlike the Arkham games, they don't always put you in harm's way. The main draw of the stealth mechanic is the ability to take out an enemy from any position that Spider-Man can potentially be in. Hanging from a ceiling? No problem, you can drop down and stick them there. Being a fly on the wall? Not an issue. Why not bring some company along too? Maybe you like your takedowns more traditional. Well, you can just sneak up behind the guards and poke them. My favorite method of takedown is the perch takedown and the zip kick takedown. You can take on any unaware enemy from any perch, and some of these look hella painful, especially when Miles does them. Miles goes OD sometimes, bro. He doesn't just like like lightly toss him in the air and then like zip him down. He like grabs their face and like rams them into the pipe. That shit's gnarly. Fucking love Miles, yeah. The animations are fantastic. You can dispatch enemies quickly with the web kick too. Just be sure though that when scanning an enemy that they're safe. If there's a danger sign, then they're in the eye line of another enemy, making anyone aware of your presence. If you get caught, you can usually just swing away and wait for a bit for them to forget that you were there, but Miles has one more power to talk about. Miles can camouflage. This can be useful to sneak up on enemies, but you can also use it to get away. Say you're surrounded by enemies, but there's a pesky sniper forcing you to constantly dodge while attacking others. Well, you can turn invisible and then make your way over there and take them out. You don't even have to do that. You can just turn invisible and just watch as all the enemies forget you were there, allowing you to enter a smaller stealth section again. Attacking anyone while camoed does use up your camouflage meter faster though, so keep an eye out when sneaking attacking. It does refill over time though. Being Spider-Man is all about swinging through the city, and honestly this is one of the best feelings in any video game. Before 2018's Marvel Spider-Man hit the shelves on PS4, the best swinging mechanic was in 2005's Spider-Man 2 back on the PS2. Since then, the closest game that came close to that swinging mechanic probably was 2008's Spider-Man Web of Shadows. But honestly, Insomniac did such a good job in these games, I have to say Spider-Man 2 finally got dethroned for best swinging mechanic. Although I can't shoot like 5 webs and attach them to 2 buildings and swing like a pendulum like I could that of Spider-Man 2, I could quickly explore the city with all of Spider-Man's movement options. Swinging is all about timing and speed. You can dive down and shoot web at the last second to swing at super high speeds, and then if you jump at the lowest point, you launch so quickly forward. Honestly, sometimes I find the movement challenges a bit frustrating just because I have the tendency to over-launch myself because I move so fast. The point launch is a fun way to cover distance quickly. If you jump while point launching, you can fling yourself, keeping all the momentum. And if you jump past the lowest point of the swing, you gain some pretty decent height. Not as much as Spider-Man 2, but not a bad amount either. Running up walls doesn't feel the best if you're not going straight up the wall, however, and web zipping up them doesn't feel like you're gaining that much more speed, or covering that much distance, honestly. I think that's something Web of Shadows did better though. I loved the wall slide. Maybe they can bring that back for a future game, Insomniac? Maybe not the sequel, I think it's a little too late for that, but like one of the later games if you want. That'd be cool. Marvel Spider-Man not only allowed you to take control of Spider-Man, but you're also able to play as Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Mary Jane, and a Spider-Bot. That's right, everyone's favorite character, Spider-Bot. You don't play as these other characters much, but they do have their own mechanics. Peter sections are mainly relegated to the lab, in which you can pick up recorders and do puzzles. These puzzles also appear when playing as Spider-Man for a side mission or two as well. The first puzzle is the battery puzzle, where you essentially have to connect one end of the battery to the other end by playing Pipes the Puzzle, if anyone's played that or knows what I'm talking about. There are a limited amount of pieces you have, and some pieces give you voltage while others are resistors, taking away the voltage. Your job is to connect the energy from one end of the puzzle to the other end while getting the right number of voltages. Or voltage, I guess. I don't know if it's plural. I'm not a scientist. The other puzzle is the mystery substance puzzle. You have to match the lines on top by adding 2 or 3 sequences together. Some sequences give you lines, others take them away, and some have both. It's a fun little puzzle, and some of the later ones are a little tricky. Mary Jane and Miles Morales' sections are stealth missions. The object of them is to predominantly get to the waypoint without being seen. You can do this by knocking things over, creating loud noises, or turning off a generator to distract guards. Mary Jane even has throwable lures to separate guards and a taser to take them out. There's even a mission where you can use Spider-Man as a way to take out guards. You can even watch him swoop down and web them up. It's pretty cool. Miles has his hacking app. This allows him to mess with certain technology, distracting the guards. That's really the only thing that separates them. The Spider-Bot is a smaller section, only being relegated to 1, maybe 2 side missions in the main game, but also receiving a few more in the City That Never Sleeps DLC. You play as a Spider-Bot in first person, and you're usually relegated to looking for something. You can use a subsonic blast to disperse crowds in one mission, as well as web up of a crook, and in the DLC you can use an EMP blast to disable lights and or car bombs. I think that covers everything in the gameplay mechanics way, at least. Let's talk about the skills, upgrades, and collectibles. As you explore and accomplish things in the city, you'll be collecting many resources. The resources include backpack tokens, crime tokens, research tokens, landmark tokens, base tokens, and challenge tokens. And in Miles Morales' case, they streamline things a bit by only having tech tokens and activity tokens. All these tokens can be gotten by doing things around the city, such as clearing up the random crimes in order to collect crime tokens. Shutting down any bases gives you the base tokens. Finding a backpack gives you backpack tokens, as well as Little Knack that you may know a reference or two from in the comics in some way. Doing puzzles or the research stations gives you research tokens, for instance, and taking pictures of landmarks gives you landmark tokens. Keep a lookout for any hidden location. By the way, you may be able to find a secret picture spot. Challenge tokens are gotten by completing the Taskmaster and the Screwball challenges in 2018. Honestly, I kind of prefer the simpler Taskmaster challenges. The Screwball ones have this picture mechanic to them that like not only makes things slower and harder, but it's like kind of clunky. You have to either knock out an enemy in or into the section that's highlighted, or make it to the picture area with like a small time frame. And doing so has like this mini game appear where you press the web shoot button when the bar is green. The idea is that you get points for it to get better score to receive all 3 tokens. They, much like Screwball, are kind of annoying. Anyway, back to the tokens. In Miles Morales, anything you do will give you an activity token, whether that be taking care of crimes, doing side missions, collecting time capsules, whatever. The tech tokens are found by picking up underground caches. The tokens in both games are... I'm so tired of saying the fucking word token. Token, 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 token. Token, 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 token. Anyway. The resources in both games are used to get the many Spidey suits and gadget upgrades. Leveling up also lets you get a skill point for your skill tree, as well as increasing your health and or melee power. The Spidey suits give you the suit powers that can be activated by pressing both analog sticks. These powers vary, but they all have decent effects. Some powers replenish your gadgets, others create a massive electric shock, others refill your focus meter. Some of them increase your melee damage. There's even one that lets Spider-Man crack a quip or 2 at enemies. That's pretty cool.
Here's a riddle. What's dumb and orange and goes thud? Here comes a hint. Spider! Complaints about my performance may be addressed to J. Jonah Jameson. Hey, he's winning! Watch out! Oh, are you allergic to webbing? Wait, I just remembered. I don't care. Don't let him get any more of us.
In Miles Morales, these suits also give suit powers, but they're more passive abilities instead of like a costume-specific power like pulling out a guitar, creating a shockwave. They're still useful, like having Venom increase as your health drops, or having a silent camouflage takedowns. Along with the visor mods, Miles also gets suit mods. These mods are also passive abilities, but you don't necessarily get them by unlocking suits, then using tokens. These are typically locked until you reach a certain level, then you can buy them with the tokens. I like the one that gives you stronger webs and the one that gives your gadgets and extra ammo the best. I kind of just always find myself using those throughout the entire game. Other collectibles include the recordings, like the ones that you can find lying around the lab, or the J. Jonah Jameson talk show and Danicast audiocasts that occur as you swing around the city. Daily Bugle front pages can be collected at any orange newspaper dispenser. QuickTime events are quick and easy, although most of them revolve around mashing the attack button or on occasion the web swing button. For both games, once completing them, you will unlock the hardest difficulty as well as New Game Plus. In Miles Morales, some of the upgrades and suits are locked until you play New Game Plus, which is honestly kinda lame. During my first playthrough, I remember thinking that the enemy variety was a little lackluster. There's only a few general types of enemies to take on, but honestly, that's all you really need. The main few types of enemies are the unarmed thug, the melee thug, the armed thug, and the shield thug, and a brute. But the thing that I really like about these enemies is that each have a different variation depending on the faction that you're coming up against. For instance, a thug/police officer with a riot shield is different from the demons with the shields. The demons with the shields can shoot like energy waves, whereas the thug police officers can't. Sable and Roxxon even have a new type of enemy that can fly around on a jetpack. Some even have their shields and have different attack patterns. Like, they're really fucking annoying. I don't really like them. Enemies with melee weapons will block most attacks, so you need to launch them or otherwise wall punch or web them. Brutes will tank any hit unless you web them. They even have variations. The whip, sword, underground shield brute, and minigun brute are just a few to mention. I'm almost positive I'm missing a few, but those are like the 4 that I can find on the wiki. They each take 2 finisher bars to take down. They even have their own methods of taking them out. There are sniper and rocket launcher enemies on top of the assault rifle enemies. Some of the pistol enemies have the annoying ability to shoot you if you start a melee combo on them in Miles Morales. They're fucking annoying. These small amount of enemy types really does get a boost in the variations and makes each encounter a really engaging experience. The bosses are pretty by the numbers. Each one amounts to webbing them up or throwing something at them, or wait until they tire themselves out and then attack them. Rinse and repeat until you win. But honestly, they're kind of fun. Like, they're really fun. And bosses like Hammerhead or Kingpin actually give me trouble because they hit pretty hard and they're surprisingly quick. Although I find the bosses a tad lackluster, I like that they mixed and matched the Sinister Six. It wasn't just to take on the Rhino, it was take on the Rhino and Scorpion. While they bicker amongst themselves, like, it's hilarious. Or like the Vulture and Electro, and like how they're kind of positive towards each other. Like, like they're just, it's fun. I don't know. My favorite bosses, though, are all the main villains. Tinkerer, Doc Ock, Mr. Negative, Kingpin, and the first Hammerhead fight. They all have a really great build-up and pretty memorable set pieces. The fights themselves are pretty challenging, but that's to be expected considering these are like the top tier villains, you know? I even liked a few of the side boss fights like Taskmaster and Tombstone. Taskmaster I remember giving me a hard time on my first playthrough, and Tombstone was just a fun villain to me. I don't know, he's cool. These games are gorgeous. The city is lovely, and the people don't look too bad either. I love that you can interact with the randos by giving them like high fives and stuff. It's pretty neat. All the suits look really cool and are predominantly based off suits from the comics, movies, or even TV series. One of my favorite suits is in Miles Morales, the Into the Spider-Verse suit. With the suit mod, it makes Miles move around at the frame rate of the movie, as well as the visor mod that shows the onomatopoeia bubbles. I don't think I showed that off, but yeah, the onomatopoeia bubbles are also in Miles Morales. It's really cool. I love the animations in these games. The way Miles swings is so full of personality. There was even an animation of him falling with his hands on his head, like he was completely in control and just relaxed. It's sweet. Peter's animations are also vivid and brilliant, the takedowns especially so. The characters' movements are very indicative of their personality. Some of my favorite being the tricks. Once you do a trick or two, there's a cool little segue animation of the character swinging a little bit different, and I just find that really cool. Alright, it's nice, it's the small little touches that I enjoy. I love the look of most of the villains too. Shocker is the only one I think kind of looks super silly. I think it's just a helmet. It looks like a giant toy to me. But the rest of the villains are all menacing and like super powerful looking. They're imposing. Rhino Miles Morales even looks pretty powerful in his Roxanne armor. Like at first I thought it was kind of ridiculous, but it kind of grew on me. And like the fact that you can't hurt him normally, like kind of just adds to the armor, like giving this extra boost. But I think the main 5 villains deserve more of a spotlight. Doc Ock has an amazing presence. Portrayed by William Salyers, he looks sleek and terrifying with those black metallic arms. I love that as the game progresses, he gradually doesn't use his actual limbs to move. It looks like there's even a decent amount of strain when he does later on too. Martin Lee, portrayed by Stephen O. Young, has a classic comic book appearance. It looks really great to see him in motion too. His demon henchmen also look frightening. Those masks are creepy as hell to me. Wilson Fisk, portrayed by Travis Willingham, had such a great and memorable presence. I love the classic Kingpin suit. Even seeing him through like the computer screen in the prison suit also looks really great. That's probably because I just really like the Kingpin though. Hammerhead, portrayed by Keith Silverstein, looked really good in the early parts of Turf Wars. Big head, the suit, mob boss mentality, it's all there, baby, all there. But as the story of the DLC continues, he turns into a giant robot, and I don't know, maybe it's the saber color scheme, or like the sheer ridiculousness of a human head on top of a giant Boston Dynamics walking unit. It just it doesn't look that good to me. Like, it just looks kind of silly. The Tinkerer, portrayed by Jasmine Savoy Brown, is an interesting look for the character. I like the neon lights and the shoulder armor with the hoodie. I even love the subtle character foreshadowing when Finn is first introduced. How the camera, whenever she's on screen, only really shows the top half colors of her sweater, which are purple. And how, like, she was fixing the doorbell to show that she likes fixing things. Purple and green are often associated with like villain character design, especially during the earlier years of comic books. So it's like super subtle. Also, she and the Undergrounds, their colors are purple. So it's like, it just kind of melts together in like a subtlety that, like, when I first played the game, I was like, she's the villain. She's one of the villains. I don't know which villain, but she's definitely a villain. Mary Jane, portrayed by Laura Bailey, is such a fun character in this game, being a reporter and always wanting to get the next big scoop. I like her design quite a bit. Definitely one of my favorite characters in this game. Miles Morales, portrayed by, and forgive me for pronouncing this wrong, Najee Jeter, in both games, looks both too old to be 16 and too young to be 16 at the same time. The Great Responsibility suit is not a flattering costume either. It makes Miles look way too skinny. But then again, some costumes, and even some of the clothes he wears, makes him look like a 20-something, so like, I don't know, man. I absolutely love Miles Morales in both these games, even in the DLC where he kept calling Spider-Man, asking him when he's going to teach him like how to swing or how to do other Spider-Man stuff. Like, I just find that kind of stuff very endearing. Like, like, I'm excited because he's excited. Like, that's the kind of vibe I was getting from Miles. I love Miles Morales. Aunt May, played by Nancy Lenari, is without a doubt my favorite character in this video game. You know, that isn't Spider-Man. May Parker has such a sweet granny vibe about her, and you know, I just can't help but like love this character. She's so great. I like the scene when Peter like needs to sleep on the sofa and he wakes up and there's money and she's like, "You're gonna take that." He's like, "I can't." He's like, "You're going to." I fucking love Aunt May, dude. Peter Parker, aka Yuri Lowenthal, aka
He's a menace. Too soft. He's a low-energy menace. Too easy. Maybe he's a weak-minded. Oh!
Hey, Jonah! Looking good! Very festive!
Menace! Affectless! Treacherous! Unhinged! Web pervert!
Is such a fantastic character. Every suit looks great. I even like the lab coat and regular clothes look. The model doesn't even look that uncanny either. One thing I love about the models is how incredibly detailed they are. There are moments in the story where the suits get dirtied or damaged, and each suit has their own like damaged, dirty look to them. There was a moment early in the game where Peter mentions he doesn't want anyone to see his 3 chest hairs, and like if you hop onto the photo mode, you can zoom in on his chest and actually see the 3 chest hairs. I find that shit so funny. Speaking of the photo mode, you can take selfies or add stickers or even mess around with the lighting and contrast in the photo. It's pretty in-depth mode to experiment with, and I remember when the game first came out, I loved taking these pictures where Spider-Man's like posing with like the peace sign. I used to do that like on top of the building and stuff. Not so much for the playthrough, but it was pretty cool. These games bring the comics to life with a bombardment of quality sound design. Everything from the gunfire to the beeps of the rockets to the thwips of the web sound are completely believable in the world of Spider-Man. My favorite in-universe things are the podcast that Miles and Peter have playing as you swing around. J. Jonah Jameson, who is played brilliantly by Darren DePaul, and Danica Hart, portrayed by Ashley Birch, add such a fun and immersive view into the news cycle and the way that the populace views our heroes. And what's crazy too is that like there are moments where I find myself kind of agreeing with Jonah's ramblings. Like there's a moment where like you blow up like part of the city accidentally. He's like, it wouldn't be for Spider-Man. This shit wouldn't happen. And it's like, you know, he kind of has a point. Like if I hadn't chased the helicopter, if I didn't accidentally web the thing to the helicopter, this helicopter would not have an improvised wrecking ball. You know, that kind of was my fault. I love the little beef Danica and Jonah have too. Like they're just wonderful. And Jared, the intern, he needs a raise. The soundtrack for 2018 Spider-Man was composed by John Paesano. It has such a classical superhero vibe. What more can you expect from the composer of the Netflix show Daredevil? Bro, I love that soundtrack. Are you kidding me? That intro? Amazing. I love the main theme, and the other pieces are fantastic as well. I also love the song that plays as you jump off buildings and swing, like this, the ambient song that plays with like the horns and the violins and shit. It's great. The dynamic feel of the music as things become more hectic or fast-paced or even like slow down is always a really cool thing to experience in any video game. I'm always going to gush about dynamic music choices in video games. Miles Morales also has music composed by John Paesano, but also had original songs made for it by artists like Jane Smith and Lecrae. The whole soundtrack has a more mellow feel to it. It's not as like heroic and like orchestral like a Superman song or like a Batman theme song like Danny Elfman style thing. It's more like hip hop and like electronic sounding. There's a cool hip hop inspired like soundtrack behind it. And honestly, like it fits Miles' character and his journey of stepping out of the shadows very, very well. He does things his own way, and the music should reflect that. Before we tackle the story, if you'd like to skip all the spoilers, go to this timestamp. There are 3 distinct stories to discuss here, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. First, I'd like to say that Marvel Spider-Man is the closest piece of media that I've experienced that actually made me feel like I was Spider-Man. And I don't mean just Spider-Man, but like also Peter Parker as Spider-Man, like his version of Spider-Man. Those first 20 or so minutes really do a phenomenal job and show you how stressful it is to be New York Spider-Man. The game starts with Peter's morning routine. On the day the NYPD have enough evidence to finally take down Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. On the way, you, the player, as Spider-Man, not only receive calls from the NYPD captain, Yuri Watanabe, who's played by Tara Platt by the way, regarding the need for this momentous occasion to go buy the books, but you also get calls from Aunt May regarding the later plans, your landlord about the eviction warning, as well as from Otto Octavius about the job that Peter needs in order to not pay his rent. It's all incredibly hectic. You follow some helicopters to where Fisk's men are causing some ruckus near Fisk Tower. After taking care of it, Spider Cop gets permission to head in and take on the Kingpin. After dealing with goon after guard, after saving innocent people from rockets that are being irresponsibly shot indoors, Pete takes on Wilson. Eventually, they both just punch the hell of each other through the floor until Wilson is captured. Kingpin has made it clear without him at the top of the organized crime rank, there's going to be bloodshed. Honestly, Spider-Man's a little too distracted with everything else going on at the moment, so he doesn't really care much about it. We meet the man, the myth, the legend, Otto Octavius. Pete and Otto make prosthetics, and they're funded by the city through grants to make research and to develop new cybernetic prosthetics. Unfortunately, Peter has a chronic tardiness problem. This then ensures that they are underprepared for the grant committee's arrival. This then leads them to having a second chance at a later point in the story. During which, Peter goes to feast, and he meets up with Martin Lee for Aunt May's little celebration party. Soon after, though, the power vacuum that has been established has begun to be filled by the inner demons. Peter ran into Mary Jane at an auction house. She stumbled upon a file hidden away within one of Fisk's statues. This file contains some information on Devil's Breath. Before anyone could find out much about it, the inner demons begin taking the auction runner hostage, and eventually find MJ and take the file back. They find a mask that was left behind by one of the demons, and Peter decides to consult Martin Lee. Lee shows concern about the mask and begins to act a bit suspicious. Otto calls Peter back to work, and when Peter shows up, Mayor Osborn appears. He shuts down Otto's research and takes away the grant. This leaves Peter jobless, and when he arrives home, he finds himself homeless. Peter spends the night at a homeless shelter run by Martin Lee and Aunt May. During the next few days, the inner demons attack other Wilson Fisk properties, and soon the investigation leads Spider-Man and Captain Watanabe to consolidated shipping. With the help of Officer Jeffrey Davis, at the recommendation of Captain Watanabe, they encounter a cache of Fisk's weapons that have been stolen by the demons. In the pursuit to receive the weapons back, Peter gets saved by Officer Davis. This act of heroism leads Mayor Osborn to award Officer Davis during his re-election campaign. The demons show up and begin bombing the campaign, however. Tragically, Many were injured and several were killed, including Officer Davis. After the funeral for Officer Davis, Peter reaches out to his son Miles Morales and insists that he should work at Feast. After the attack on the mayor, Osborn calls in Silver Sable and her mercenaries to help aid in the capture of Martin Lee, who now is going by Mr. Negative. The Sables are incredibly corrupt and do increasingly illegal things in the name of protection to the citizens of New York. Eventually, MJ and Peter learn that Martin Lee has a grudge against Mayor Osborn, as well as what the real purpose is of GR-27, also known as Devil's Breath. Devil's Breath was supposed to be a cure for all genetic diseases, however, in its current form, it acts more as a bioweapon. Mr. Negative manages to steal Devil's Breath and wants to unleash it at Grand Central, while making the world aware of Mayor Osborn's corrupt and illegal activities. He, however, gets foiled by the partnership between Mary Jane Watson and Spider-Man. Lee gets sent to the Raft, which is a supermax prison, holding the strongest of villains, especially those that Spider-Man has put away. The likes of Shocker, the Scorpion, the Rhino, the Vulture, and Wilson Fisk all are landed in the island prison, the Raft. After the defeat of Mr. Negative, Peter tries to go back to the status quo, but he begins to realize Otto also has a very large disdain for Mayor Osborn. And soon after, Peter learns of Otto's degenerative disease. Their work has allowed Dr. Octavius to create artificial tentacle-like arms. However, the piece that connects to his brain for the arms to work messes with Otto and it messes with his personality a bit. Dr. Octopus has had the plan to weaken the Raft's defenses and even has been able to help out some of the supervillains locked away so they can work for him. These villains all together form the Sinister Six. Octavius then plans to have Electro, Rhino, Vulture, Scorpion, and Mr. Negative all work together to destroy Oscorp buildings and sites to hurt Mayor Osborn financially. Doc Ock also releases Devil's Breath and infects all of New York to this bioweapon. MJ sneaks into Mayor Osborn's penthouse and soon learns about Harry's illness. Harry's a longtime friend of both Peter and Mary Jane, and he had left for a trip to Europe before the game's events had occurred. Or so they thought. Devil's Breath was created in order to save Harry from his terminal illness. Mary Jane also learns that Martin Lee was one of the Devil's Breath test subjects and he had unleashed his powers by accident, killing his parents. This is the result of the hatred for Mayor Osborn. Peter manages to defeat Vulture, Rhino, Scorpion, and Electro. At the meantime, MJ tells Pete where the location of the cure is and he heads over there. Arriving at the lab, Peter defeats Mr. Negative, but Doc Ock appears and weakens Peter, steals the cure, and takes Norman hostage. Peter creates the anti-Ock suit using the same technology that Otto's arms are made of, and goes to fight him. Doc Ock and Spider-Man have a very intense battle. It's also filled with a lot of emotion. The tragedy that Otto has to live in the rest of his life in his useless body, betraying his last friend, honestly brought me to tears during my first playthrough. The second playthrough I kept a better lookout, and now I see it as like another manipulation tactic, and truthfully, it's hard for me to choose between genuine cries for help or malicious plea to backstab. And that goes a lot. That says a lot about the writing for this game. The fact that like I'm able to replay the same game and get a different outlook on it and start to see like all the small little things that have been just building upon building. Like the foreshadowing has always been there. It's just you see it in a different light your first time through. The second time through, you're like, oh shit. He says it's a $3 million contract, but it's really just a ploy to weaken the Raft. Like, it's crazy. And then you start to like hear the recordings and there's like slow descent into madness. At my first playthrough, I thought that was the arms taking over. Maybe that's just been there the whole time and the arms are just the arms. They're not even fully controlling him. So it's fun. It's a great, great style of writing this game has. It's good. Peter goes back to Feast, beaten, battered, nearly hopeless. Aunt May is succumbing to the illness she received from Devil's Breath. Peter only has enough cure to save one person, but that cure can also be used to make more cures in order to save all of New York. Racked with an incredibly difficult decision, Spider-Man almost used it to save his aunt. May revealed that she knew that Peter was Spider-Man all along. She knew what he had to do. Their goodbye scene made me burst into tears in my first playthrough. Honestly, I still kind of tear up every time I watch this scene. Like, I'm just never ready for it. Then it's shown that the spider that clung on top of Mary Jane's jacket when she was at the penthouse bites Miles. May is buried next to Uncle Ben. 3 months pass, and MJ and Peter are back together. In a post-credit scene, Miles shows Peter his newfound ability, and Peter reveals to Miles who Spider-Man truly is. There's also a post credit scene showing Norman Osborn placing his hand on a tank that is containing Harry. The tank also shows it has a symbiote. While Norman places his hand on the tank, so too does the symbiote. The City That Never Sleeps begins by saying it's 3 months later. Now, just real quick, I'm not 100% sure if that means it's 3 months after May passing or if it's 3 months after that and it's after Miles reveals his newfound powers. So, but regardless, 3 months have passed since the main game. Since the power vacuum left behind by Fisk and the Inner Demons hasn't fully been taken care of, the BlakJak crime family decides they want to be the leaders of New York's organized crime. BlakCat is back in town, and she's up to her old tricks, stealing art and flirting with a costume superhero. Felicia Harding is actually working for Joseph Martello, who is also known as Hammerhead. By the way, I can't believe it took me like 20 fucking years to realize that Hammerhead's last name literally means hammer in Italian. Martello? Get out of here. Like, I amaze myself sometimes with like my utter brilliance. Hammerhead plans to take over all 5 BlakJak families by stealing their flash drives. The drives all contain data that is tied to all of the 5 BlakJak family assets. We're just gonna skip over the whole BlakCat's son being kidnapped thing, because obviously it's not Peter's kid. Although I was invested at first mention of it, I thought maybe it was like a cat or something. There is no kid. That was just manipulation to get Peter to help Felicia get all 5 drives and swap them out with the fakes. Along the way, Spider-Man learns of Hammerhead's containers filled with Sable International weapons and armor. After Peter helps Felicia steal the last drive, she traps him in the vault that her supposed son was in. Hammerhead learned of the betrayal and rigged her apartment to blow up. Episode 1 of The City That Never Sleeps ends with BlakCat blowing up in the apartment explosion as Hammerhead makes his appearance, watching from a distance. Episode 2, Turf Wars, continues a few days after BlakCat's disappearance after the explosion. The BlakJak crime families have made New York City their battleground as gang warfare rages. The other 4 BlakJak Dons have banded together in order to take on the Martello family. The Martellos are now equipped with Sable International weapons and armor, while the other families are just struggling to survive. I mean, like, one dude has like a little pea shooter pistol and this other fucker has like a minigun. I don't know, dog. Good luck, bro. Spider-Man and Police Captain Yuri Watanabe work together in order to put a stop to this madness. They both have intel that Hammerhead will be in one of his bases, so the two of them devise a plan to capture Hammerhead. Spider-Man was to distract the reinforcements while Yuri brought her SWAT team in the base to take them down. Hammerhead managed to brutally murder the entire team except for Yuri, who survives. She carries this strategy with her for the rest of the game. Hammerhead is planning to capture all 4 BlakJak Dons, so Spider-Man tries to protect them at the safe house. However, along with weapons and armor that were stolen, Hammerhead's crew also managed to steal blueprints for Diggy Boys. With these massive transport drill vehicles, they managed to burrow right under the building where the Dons were, and they were captured. Spider-Man locates the Dons and saves them from being drowned in cement. Who else is there? Why, none other than Joseph Martello himself, this time donning Project Olympus. After a few headbutts and a little bit of luck, Spider-Man manages to stop Hammerhead. However, Yuri took the law into her own hands. She shot Hammerhead dead in front of not only Spider-Man, but also her comrades in the force. This is a very public execution. One thing I have to hand it to the DLC, it does not hold back. Hammerhead's metal skull is out for display after this attack, and honestly, even the SWAT team's tragedy was a little too tough to watch for me. However, Yuri's work seems to be a moot point. While the ambulance was carrying Hammerhead, one of the riders kills the other rider in the ambulance. Using a taser, he manages to revive Hammerhead, and The City That Never Sleeps continues into Episode 3, Silver Lining. The news of Hammerhead being revived isn't hidden. This brings Silver Sable back from the current civil war that's happening in her home country of Sumkaria. Sable and Spider-Man begrudgingly work together in order to interrogate one of the Martellos. They find out about an obvious trap for Sable on top of the Calixco building. Sable goes despite Spider-Man's warnings of the obvious trap, but she flies up there anyway in her jet. Spidey saves Sable from the trap, but the newly improved Hammerhead joins the fray. As Peter was about to be overpowered by Hammerhead's new body, BlakCat shows up and saves him. Felicia apologizes about the previous incident and hands over a drive containing information on how to stop Hammerhead. Hammerhead has Sable captured and tortured underground, but Peter saves the day, and together they learn that heat is capable of softening the metal in Joseph's head. Together they go to Sable's secret Hudson River base and outfit the jet with a massive heat laser. Hammerhead lands on the boat and begins to throw down with Spider-Man. With the help of Spider-Man, Sable puts an end to Hammerhead by crashing her jet into him and blowing it up. Spider-Man Morales continues a little over a year after Joseph Martello's defeat at the hands of Spider-Man and Silver Sable. Miles has spent all that time training under Peter, and although he has quite a lot of it figured out, he still isn't completely confident in his place as the new Spider-Man. The lack of confidence is only furthered after Peter and Miles escort a prison transport containing a few of the Rap's escapees, including the Rhino. That horrible Parker luck strikes when the Rhino breaks free and runs around causing massive destruction everywhere he goes. Miles takes on the escapees, and Peter deals with Alexei. Peter, for plot reasons, gets overpowered by the Rhino, and it's up to Miles to stop him. Miles awakens a latent ability of his, now dubbed Venom, and manages to stop the Rhino. After Rhino was defeated, Roxxon swoops in and takes him into custody. Peter gives Miles a Spider-Man suit as an early Christmas present. Peter also mentions that he'll be out of town for a few weeks with Mary Jane. They'll be working on a piece about Symkaria for the Daily Bugle. Peter and Miles do the Spidey Oath, thus making Miles in charge of all of New York City. That night, Genki, Miles' friend from Brooklyn Tech, finds a break-in at Roxxon Labs. Miles goes to investigate only to find a gang of high-tech thugs vandalizing the labs. They seem to be after Roxxon shipment routes. This group is known as the Underground. They are one of the many gangs that want to seek power in the absence of Fisk, but were pretty much pushed aside by the Maggi family during Hammerhead's attacks. Now the Underground has a new leader, a young, incredibly smart engineer who was able to build them incredible weapons and armor. Their leader goes by the Tinkerer. After a break-in, Miles goes home to enjoy Christmas dinner with his mom, Rio, and Genki. Rio also invited a secret guest. Finn Mason joins this wonderful festivity. Finn is Miles' best friend during middle school. They even won an award for their energy converter, and that placed them in a museum exhibit. The following day, Genki and Miles unleashed their brand new Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app. Using the app, Miles' uncle, Aaron, contacts Spider-Man to help him with the subway tracks. After Miles takes care of the Underground and their attempts to bomb the train, Aaron Davis tells Miles that he knew he was the new Spider-Man. Rio Morales is running for council. During her campaign run, the Underground attacks. Miles jumps into action. He begins to take out the Underground. Soon after, he learns of their plan to steal Newform. On the bridge, Loki, forgot the name of it, I think it's like Braithword or some shit, I can't remember for the life of me. Miles accidentally sets off the Newform on the truck, blowing up the bridge. Roxxon then tries to take Miles captive, but Miles escapes using his newfound ability in camouflage. During the bridge fiasco, Miles learns that Finn is the Tinkerer. Miles feels defeated, but it was Genki who helped him through his little funk. Genki told Miles to stop emulating the OG Spider-Man and learn to be himself. Then a fun little montage happens where Spider-Man learns how to drink coffee upside down. He builds his own suit. It's pretty neat. It's a good one. I like that one. I don't really like montages, but I like that one. Learning of Finn's identity, he heads over to her family repair shop. There, he learns why the Underground has a vendetta against Roxxon. Turns out, her brother Rick worked there on the Newform energy project. Because Newform is highly unstable, Rick ended up dying during a meltdown with Finn as a witness. Miles finds out there was evidence on the phone Finn dropped, so he heads back to Roxxon Labs in order to recover it. Uncle Aaron helps out his nephew by donning his Prowler identity and hacking the Roxxon defenses, as Spider-Man crawls around undetected. Upon watching the video, Miles gets caught by Roxxon, and in the ensuing scuffle, the phone gets fried by Miles' bioelectricity. Finn's plan is to blow up Roxxon Plaza's Newform reactor, to show the world what Simon Krieger was hiding about his new sustainable energy source. Miles then infiltrates Finn's underground base inside of Fisk Tower. Well, by infiltrate, I mean he asked if he can join the club, and then she made him jump off a crane onto a ledge. So he did it. Eventually, Miles slips into his pajamas and beats up a ton of underground goons. Miles chases after Finn. He tries to explain to her what's happening, but she won't listen. Eventually, Tinkerer has Spider-Man cornered, and so Miles shows her who he is. Finn lets him live, but she's hurt. Miles calls the Prowler for advice. His advice was pretty much, make time for the things you love doing, and after they made a few beats, Miles told him the plan to meet with Finn. Uncle Aaron passes the information along to his employer. Finn and Miles meet at Trinity Church to work out their differences, but the meeting is short-lived. The Rhino came back with his new and improved Venom-proof armor. Both Spider-Man and Tinkerer are captured and taken to Roxxon. While trying to escape, the relationship between Miles and Finn is slowly unraveling and turning bitter on Finn's side. As the friendship is slowly turning sour, Miles stumbles upon Krieger's modifications to the Plaza's reactor. If it were to blow, all of New York would go with it, not just the Plaza like Finn had intended. Miles also learns that they were caught because of Uncle Aaron. The nature of the relationship comes to a head when they both have to work together to take on Rhino. With the new armor, both kids need to come up with ways to break it. Eventually, Rhino's armor gets destroyed by Finn's programmable matter sword, and a shock or two later, Rhino's down for the count. While Miles was getting evidence to expose Roxxon, so that no one would have to die by the unstable reactor, Finn was being baited by Rhino's insults. Finn almost killed Alexei, and I'm going to put that one in air quotes. It's not stated Alexei survived. The Rhino could have very well died. I'm just going by what the wiki says. The wiki says he almost died. We're going to go with almost died. Anyway, Finn nearly killed Alexei, and with that, their friendship was completely severed. Genki, being the best friend a man can hope for, brings a broken and beaten Miles home. Rio is home and learns of Miles' escapades as Harlem Spider-Man. She sticks by his side though, and that gives Miles a little more confidence to do the right thing. Miles heads over to the abandoned science museum that Finn and him had their energy converter at, but along the way, Uncle Aaron kidnaps Miles in order to protect him. The two fight, one to protect the little family he has left, the other to protect all of the little families in the city. Spider-Man overcomes his uncle's skill and experience and heads off to stop Finn. Miles heads back to the Science Museum and has a trip down memory lane, eventually realizing that Finn had taken the energy converter while he was imprisoned. The battle for Harlem was about to start and Miles had to stop Finn. Roxxon and the Underground had begun fighting on the streets of Harlem. Rio and Genki were helping people evacuate buildings and the neighborhood. Miles eventually found Finn and they began to fight. As the fight progressed, Miles tried to make Finn see sense, but she was too caught up in her revenge and betrayed feelings to hear nor understand how much damage was about to be caused. Miles beat Finn, but there was an explosion that knocked her out of a window, and Miles saved her, but was greatly injured. He managed to absorb the reactor's energy, barely being able to walk, but the energy he absorbed was too much for his body to contain. Finn decided she should sacrifice herself by carrying Miles up a building and holding him in a very La Pieta kind of way, especially with that golden light coming from behind them. Miles plummets to the ground, not dying somehow, but his secret identity is revealed to a small group of people. They're all homies though, and don't tell the reporter showing up to the scene. 4 weeks later, Roxxon heads to research and development. Simon Krieger was arrested following Aaron Davis coming clean. Both the Prowler and Simon Krieger are behind bars. Peter is back. He congratulates Miles on his job well done. Or is it? The job, not him doing good. The two take off to stop crime. In the post-credit scene, Norman decides to stop the experiments that Dr. Kirk Connors was helping him with on Harry. Miles sometime later is found leaving the award that he and Finn won all that time ago in Trinity Church, and he pays his respects. The storytelling in 2018's Marvel Spider-Man is a masterclass of suspense and action with a little mystery and a good deal of emotion. It's quite a good story, and it really does make you feel like Peter Parker for the first half hour. Everything is chaotic and happening all at once. After that first half hour or so, things slow down a bit, but the chaos of Peter's life does still culminate into a hectic story with a lot of good foreshadowing and really great characters. The DLC does not hold back for the first 2 episodes. It's action-packed, it's chaotic, and honestly, it's really dark in a few places. Episode 3 felt a little too quick and a little too much like filler, but Sable's motives are interesting, and I like the chemistry between her and Peter. 2020 Spider-Man Miles Morales is a short and sweet coming-of-age type of story. The villains are predictable and their motives are understandable. There are a few moments in the story where I kept saying to myself, why would they do that? Or how did he survive that? Or this could have been avoided. Or the Rhino got won over on Peter? What? It doesn't reach the high set by 2018 Spider-Man, but I do think it's about on par with the DLC story. I enjoyed all the characters, and there was a lot of great set pieces and moments that stand out to me, especially the bridge scene. I always loved scenes like Peter in Spider-Man 2 holding the train back, or Tom Holland when he's holding the ship together. I always love that kind of thing. That's always a staple that needs to keep happening. It's great. Marvel Spider-Man is a fantastic game. It has tight and fluid gameplay with an amazing story, and it looks and sounds phenomenally. The City That Never Sleeps doesn't take anything away from the main game. In fact, it just adds more things to do and more suits to unlock. I played this on the PS5 to the digital code that Miles Morales gives you, and the only thing that you lose is the fast travel. On the original release, whenever you use the fast travel mode, you have a few little fun scenes where Spider-Man's on the subway, or he's in the subway with the people, he's on it looking through the window. It's pretty cool. They changed every time, and honestly, it made me want to just fast travel more. On the PS5, since the game loads so quickly now, I find myself wanting to swing through the city instead. That way, I don't miss any potential podcasts that may or may not play if I was on the subway. Spider-Man Miles Morales is a good game. It keeps the tight and fluid gameplay while adding a few new abilities that make Miles feel different from Peter. Although I think the controls in a few cases are a little jank, it still holds up. I do think the game is too short though. I clocked in about 8.5 hours my first playthrough, and we're going to compare that to Spider-Man's nearly 20 hours of gameplay, by the way. Like, the first game was long compared to this one. The biggest issue I have though with the game is honestly the New Game Plus. I like 100%ing some games, and these two were no exception. But my first playthrough of Miles Morales, I never 100%ed it. That's because the game locks some of the upgrades and skill tree abilities as well as a suit or two behind the New Game Plus. And it feels like that decision was made to artificially increase the playtime of the game instead of just making the game a bit longer. And I think that also is slightly true because you can't skip every cutscene in the game. Like a lot of the more serious story cutscenes you just can't skip. And I find that really odd. Personally, I love these games. I think they're well worth a purchase. If you can find a copy of Spider-Man Morales that isn't $70, it's worth it. And it even comes with a digital code to the original game. Although if you just want Marvel Spider-Man, it's well worth the price of a new game. If I were to rate these games separately, I'd have to give 2018's Marvel Spider-Man an outstanding 10 out of 10. I think Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales should get a solid 8.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and sorry that this took so long for me to make a video. I'll try and get back into the swing of things, and hopefully I can actually tackle some of my other projects I wanted to do. See you all next time.